by Elizabeth Bishop. Elizabeth Bishop is an American poet and a short storyteller. She published only 100 poems in her lifetime, and she is still considered one of the most distinguished and important American poets of the 20th century. She won a Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1956. Her poem, One Art, is considered one of the best villanelles of all time. One Art was one of her few first-person poems, in which the I is the central part of the poem. The stanza details the speaker's losses, which increase in magnitude as the poem proceeds, culminating in the most personal of losses. The poem advocates the idea that loss is a part of everyday life, ranging from small, minor things that occur on a daily basis, building up to major, influential losses that have a more significant impact on her life. The poem suggests that loss is a natural part of life, and although it can be emotional, frustrating, or confusing at times, it is not a disaster. Bishop uses poetic structure, strong word choice, and a major shift in tone in the final stanza of the poem to bring out the true meaning in the poem. The poet uses the 19-line villanelle poetic form to build up the tone of the poem in an intense, methodic manner. A villanelle poem typically consists of 5 3-line tercets, followed by a final quatrain consisting of 4 lines. With each tercet, the level of loss grows increasingly intense, moving from the simple things, such as lost keys, misplaced thoughts, or other everyday items, to the eventual loss of a loved one. The shift from tercets to quatrain reveals a significant shift in the poet's sense of loss. The unique pattern and punctuation of the stanza emphasizes the emotional effect of the final loss. The first and third lines of the opening tercet are repeated in an alternating pattern, as the final line of each next tercet provides unity across all of her losses. The repetitive reference to losing isn't hard to master across emphasizes the point that with enough repetition, loss becomes simply another acceptable part of life. The poet employs strong word choice to emphasize her sentiments toward life's losses. Her repetitive use of the phrase, the art of losing, suggests that loss is simply a skill that can be mastered over time with practice. That is, practicing with the smaller losses will help one cope with their greater losses in life. The more adept one becomes in dealing with loss, the less disastrous the other losses will become. Her repetitive use of their loss is no disaster suggests that she's trying to convince the audience that their losses are not that important in their life. Her choice of words supports growing intensity of loss throughout the poem. She alludes to lost door keys and hours badly spent, words that reflect items that are common to everyday individuals in their lives. Her references to losing places and names and where you meant to travel provides a sense of familiarity to the reader, as everyone has had similar moments of loss during their life. Later in the poem, the use of I and my suggests a shift in emotional senses, providing a sense that loss is becoming more personal as the poem progresses. In the poem One Art, in the final stanza, the quatrain concludes the poem with a major shift in tone, the final loss. In this stanza, she no longer references material things, but focuses on the most significant loss in her life, the loss of a loved one. It is here that the poet reveals a transition from invincibility to that of deep sorrow. The words, even losing you, shifts the tone from casual attitude of everyday things to pure personal emotion. Despite her efforts to trivialize life's losses by suggesting that their loss is no disaster, In the end, the poet is faced with loss that can only be accepted by deep emotions, and that she cannot quite deal with. With the words, "Write it," she attempts to force herself to deal with the grief of losing her loved one, in the same manner as she would with any other loss. She convinces herself that one no different from the other is this loss. However, the reader perceives that for the poet, the loss of this loved one is in fact a disaster.